Do you feel like CEOs are in crisis mode now?
I don't actually think CEOs in crisis because of the opportunity in technology. The more difficult one is, how do I activate the opportunity this technology gives to me? How do I get aggressively after the opportunity? Do I have the right plan for it? If everybody needs to second guess, okay, what mood is it today? What is the decision principle? Which line do I need to queue to get investments? This is all interesting but not helpful. I don't have time for that. I don't want to do it.
What is your piece of advice to those individuals to challenge things like, as an example, we are not going to go to a large language model because we don't know what the ROI is?
You need to invite somebody to join you versus to push somebody to go somewhere. And that one, I feel, is a bit the art where people really need time to see through.
There's three people on a ladder, one at the top, one at the middle, one at the bottom. Who is the most important?
The bottom is doing the job.
And one of the things you said in that keynote, I actually wrote it down here, is we got this technology in our hands and we'll never have it again in our professional lives. We're the only ones who can make the decision with how it's used. That's what you said. Do you feel like CEOs are in crisis mode now? Would they stay from like that?
I don't actually think CEOs in crisis because of the opportunity in technology. There are a lot of reasons in markets where you see CEOs being in a tough spot, making tough decisions. Economic, geo, then industries are shifting. Take Germany, automotive is there, energy industry is shifting, chip industry. So there's a lot of really hard business challenges. And then on top of that, you have something which is everybody says, man, I need to do something. So I think the more difficult one is, okay, how do I activate the opportunity this technology gives to me? And that's a fair thing, we would say, for everybody to say, what do I do to make the best out of it? Do I get aggressively after the opportunity? Do I have the right plan for it, right game plan, the right activities?
What I love about that is obviously at your level, from a global perspective, there's a massive level of versatility that you have in your lens, just with the global role that you have, to see how some may be in crisis mode or may not be in crisis mode. Some may be in that still explore and creative mode.
Yeah.
And I want to get into that with you in a lot of detail, right? But I want to start off with your journey, because you've got a tremendous journey. A German, started in France, China, Singapore, leading EMEA enterprise. So EMEA enterprise, and I was doing some research on this about the EMEA enterprise market that you covered. Massive government, commercial, public sector. And then in tandem to that, there's this big business called small, medium enterprise and channels in EMEA, in Asia, and in Americas. And you've decided to change that, take on that role, Executive Vice President, Chief Revenue Officer for small, medium enterprise and channels. But let's start off with your journey, right at the beginning, Ralph. Where did it all start? Tell me a little bit about you, and then we'll go into the journey.
Look, I think the real fair starting line for me of many, I'm a classical German engineer to some extent. I was during high school and then got intrigued by engineering capabilities. So I then got lucky because what I got offered is what it's called a dual degree opportunity, where I had a working contract with IBM at that time, and same time a student contract with the university, and I did basically both at the same time. So I got a degree, but I also had a working experience. And the working experience was in times when digital engineering started. So I started the 3D engineering design and all kind of shop floor design. I was writing actually the software for high availability systems in the Unix world for IBM, which then got rolled out, which is pretty funny. The engineering piece is for sure big in my start. And then during that time, my first job was a classical, and it leads a bit into the job we do right now, new account customer sales rep. So I went to a place in Germany, Hamburg, never been there before, kind of showed up. I had a time-bound contract, so just an 18 months time contract. And then the manager at that time gave me the yellow pages and said, look, here's your destiny, zip code 22200 to zip code 22500. This is your territory. Find new customers. Good luck, my friend. So this is how it started. And then at some point, kind of 4 or 5 years later, I got asked to run the software business for channel and small and mid-market business at IBM, which brought me into software. I had no clue about software, but then that was basically the first time I really got into the software. And out of that one, I got a call going to Europe, Paris. And in Paris, still for IBM, running everything distribution and software channel. So there's a reason why 30 years later, there's a connection back to this small, medium, and enterprise channel business, because I was always intrigued on small full circle, bring it back, had distribution there. Being in Paris, I got the call if I want to join Microsoft. So that's how we started. First day Microsoft, I walked on a floor in level 36, I think it was. And what I saw was a book like that thick, and everything as applications you can have on Access databases. So it's just, again, the sentiment of understanding what scale means, how you can run that one was very intriguing, and journey was fascinating for me.
Where does the decision-making come from, right? Because university, doing a dual role, right? And from my background, I know typically when you do that, you're doing it because you're trying to fund university, right? So doing that dual role, engineering, you're figuring out technology, no real experience. You're doing high availability, so no real experience in software just yet. You get a yellow pages and you're like cold calling. Now, Ralph, for a lot of people, especially in 2026, in today's career world, it's not a very easy thing to just say, I'm going to take this yellow pages and I'm going to do cold calling and I'm going to prospect. And I'm going to be bold and courageous and do it. So where does that fire come from to do that? But then also at the same time, when I look at Paris, move countries, move across the border.
I think it's a combination of having a reasonable judgment of risk. So what do I lose if I try it? So what is actually at risk? And that risk scale changed when you get into times of family, whatever, that changed. But principle is still what if not? And the other one is, and I didn't know at that time, but it kind of came clearer to me, I would say maybe even only at 5 years ago or so, that I have this curiosity being a thing for me. And so when I went to the software business, I got the call from a general manager. And then he said, I want you to run this software business. I said, dude, I have no idea what software means. And he said, look, he literally said, if I would be interested in your opinion, I would have asked you, what do you think about it? I'm not asking you what you think about it. I'm asking you to do it. And I said, thanks for letting me know, then let's go and give it a try. So that was a bit almost a lucky move, right? Bringing me into the software. But the curiosity thing is one which sticks and got to me clear over years. That is something which drives me. Having an opportunity to learn something, having an opportunity to build experience, put it against another problem and try to figure out what you can do that one. That's for sure pushing me.
So it's really that curiosity to try to unpack things, also learn new markets for obviously moving across the border.
That was the other one. I mean, at that time, look, different, I would almost say different geopolitical context and easier than it maybe is today for many. But I was personally on a mission to say, I want to work international. I want to make international experiences. And so when I got the call, it was also funny. I mean, I literally was in an interview in at that time, Armonk, in the headquarters of IBM. Then they had a fire drill.
Wow.
So we needed to evacuate the building. And I was standing at a meeting point with the guy who interviewed me, super senior executive. But then the boss of this guy came and said, Ralph, what are you doing here? Well, I'm interviewing for this guy, which is your guy, for this job, which is here in Armonk. And he said, you guys didn't get the memo, right? You go to Paris and run this thing in Paris. I was like, I'm glad you let me know. Is it worthwhile we discuss? I said, no, okay, that's fine. Thanks for sharing. So, but then having had been the opportunity in Paris was pretty cool. That started the journey.
Are you still connected with that leader that hired you?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
The guy is substantially older.
Okay. So I'm not trying to aid you with this next question, okay? But I'm curious because you've obviously seen, starting off our conversation, we talked about AI and the versatility of AI adoption around the world with your global scale and your global capacity. You've obviously had a chance to see different technology shifts. Call them technology, call them mobile, internet, cloud. Some customers might still be on that journey. And now with AI, like what are some of the key patterns, similar patterns that you've seen across these technology shifts? And what do you think makes us unique today with AI that we got to do differently?
The fundamental difference for me personally is that if I compare it to two important milestones in my life, one was during my early days in Hamburg at that time. A friend of mine was at university and called me. It said, "You need to come urgently to the university. I need to show you something. It's called Mosaic." So if you may recall, Mosaic was the first web interface for anything internet.
So I didn't know what it is, but now I know what.
It was literally the first web-based kind of graphical interface for anything internet. And so this is the first wave I did. And then the other one was when cloud came. But these things at the beginning both started from a technology perspective and trying to build a value story and sure that I think AI is slightly different. IA, in my view, has massive user demand, consumer end user demand. And that's changing in my perception. It came with internet as well, but it took much longer. This one is straight. I mean, where do you have had your first interaction with anything AI? I had it with my kids, the famous Christmas Eve, where they actually explained me how they use now OpenAI for their masters.
Oh.
So that's where the whole story started to some extent, very different. And so I think that's also the difference in this opportunity we have right now. It's across countries, across societies. It has no limits on any industry. The highest pickup of the technology is in financial industries, which always have been slow in adapting of technology to some extent. I think they are now leading it. So for me, very, very different and very unique on what is possible right now and super exciting.
How do you create that level of energy, inspiration, and excitement with such a massive organization, right? Because of course, Executive Vice President, Chief Revenue Officer for every mid-market, every SMB organization across the world for Microsoft, largest technology innovation company in the world. And then obviously in tandem to that, you have an entire partner ecosystem. Massive. The companies some of them are publicly traded, many of them are privately owned, classified as services partners, right? So at your level, your energy around the technology innovation and the curve that is going on in the market right now, how do you create that level of energy, excitement, and clarity with the organization to go and inspire that with customers?
For me, it was a good learning getting back into the small, medium enterprise business and also looking back into our channels, what we do actually. And if you look at pure facts where you say, okay, that's interesting. In any country you pick on the planet, small, medium enterprises represent 90% plus of any employment. Depending on country, you're between 40 and 60% GDP. Different countries, even higher GDP. So the intellectual ambition, if we get it right, where I know we have a strong portfolio, but getting it right for these companies to benefit to see the value, I think is just kind of a brilliant challenge to really think through what it needs to be, that we need to make people understand, get visibility, and see through. And I believe this is, I think, one of the biggest opportunities you can have in life to really influence and impact. And then if you see an organization like we are in SMEC, where we have been putting together a lot of different organizations to make one. And some parts of the organization had, quite frankly, tough business times. So there was not everything was rainbow and sunshine. And giving this organization perspective, kind of being there to help people see through and simplify as long and as much as you can in a complicated environment. That is a bit kind of where I get energy. If I can simplify and help people getting stuff done, where I know the moment we get it right, the impact we have in society and market, that combination, I think, is just a brilliant foundation on getting me out of bed and steering me up to try to be in here with all I can.
So I had a chat with a few of your team members before this interview. And the first thing they said to me, well, they talked a lot about your curiosity and your global experience that you shared earlier on. But the second thing that came up, and this is very true, is your ability to define signals out of the noise. So the simplicity that you just talked about, right? So I'm super curious because, again, I go back to the scale. You just said 40 to 50% of GDP in some countries. You also just said 90% of employment. Like, that's huge, right? So how do you, in a world of sales, in a world of technology empowerment, in the world of outcomes, in the world of channel, which is bidirectional, 3 directions of channel selling to a customer, in a world of product plus services, in a world of implementation. I say all that because there's so many things there already, right? How do you simplify that as a seller, as a leader to go and scale in a market?
Then a couple of thoughts. So first of all, for me, most important is really this combination of, again, curiosity, but then listening in what is actually going on.
Right.
So a good friend of mine at some point told me, look, man, there's a reason why God gave you 1 mouth and 2 ears. It's better you listen to stuff and understand what's going on before I try to have a point of view. And I'm trying to do that in a reasonable, systematic way. So there are times when I'm very intentionally going into market, and sometimes I go in without a deep agenda into market because I just benefit from being there 2 or 3 days, listening in and hearing what's going on. I think you need to reward also the organization to just tell you stuff. So you need to find a good path for the organization, a good kind of sentiment of the organization. Just let people speak what's going on all levels, in all geographies, and all whatever it is. And then I think the third one is really at some point you just build options, build opinions. And then you let leaders react against these opinions. And then you start filtering out where you may have got it wrong or where you may have got it right. And then you try to take the 3 or 4 and focus on them so that you actually can generate some kind of success for the organization and see that it is worthwhile having a voice, listening in, having an opinion, take the opinion to action and work against this one. So you build actually an organization who is working on their own destiny and just not sitting there to somebody tell anything. And that's a bit where I'm trying to play a role. I'm just playing a role for the organization. My job is doing something for the organization. That's all what my job is. I'm not leading, I'm doing a job for the organization. And that's where I try to be helpful.
Your systems thinking is blowing my mind in the way you're responding to my questions, by the way. But to do that job that you just said is your role requires a lot of patience, which evidently, maybe no. You tell me.
I don't know. I don't think it's patience is not a bad thing, but I wouldn't declare that I'm super patient, quite frankly.
What's a bad day for you?
A bad day for me is a day where I don't have time to think. A bad day is a day where I'm running pretty extensive back to back. It's just, and bad is a relative statement, right? So I always feel the good thing is I can make decisions for myself. So if the schedule is the schedule, I'm myself responsible. But I think there's nothing bad in an organization in regards to customer problems, partner problems. That's the reason why we are here. That's the reason why I'm here. The buck stops here. I need to help people get stuff done. But I think a day which is not exactly helpful for me and the organization is when you're back to back and don't have time to think.
You don't really have time to really sanitize, process, and to do the role that you were just describing, right? Around the space for your leaders, around the space for you to listen, around the space for you to absorb what customers are saying, what people are saying, what partners are saying, so you can be decisive with clarity. Now, to set up an environment like that, it requires a lot of authenticity, which I can see. It's very evident. And I remember in some of your first calls, I remember your very first call.
Really?
True story. Very first call when you came on. So, of course, your predecessor moved on.
Yeah.
Announcement came on. I'm obviously part of the organization. I've been part of the organization for a long time. And then, of course, as every organization goes in technology, a lot of us are at the edge of our seats. All right, well, who's the new guy?
That's the newbie.
Who's the new guy? And so obviously it was announced that you were coming into the seat. And I remember your very first call, by the way. You came on the stage and you said, I think I'm a little bit nervous, but there's going to be some changes for the good, for the better. I'm paraphrasing here, so don't be upset if I'm misrepresenting what you said. But I remember you came across as very authentic. Is the point. And I was like, all right, like very interesting, very, very good approach. Now I would want to share things with you. So where does that come from? Like, and why is that important to be that level, to have that level of authenticity?
Therefore, I think the most important thing is that people come and have joy, fun. One learning I had, which is for me personally, at least, I would say, I want to go a place where I can get stuff done. And the best way for me getting stuff done is knowing for me, what are the guardrails? And so I think to some extent, my job is being as clear as possible with everybody, how I operate, who I am, what are basics of how I look at stuff. And so that one, I think, is just for me a bit the place to say, okay, guys, if everybody needs to second guess, okay, what mood is it today? What is the decision principle? Who is making in this organizational decision? What who do I need to influence? Which line do I need to queue to get investments? This is all interesting, but not helpful. And so I'm trying to cut this stuff because it doesn't make fun and I don't have time for it.
And it takes too long to get to the outcome.
I don't have time for that shit. And I don't want to do it.
I love that. Well, see, there's the authenticity right there that I'm talking about, right? So I sincerely appreciate you saying this. Now I'm very curious because, we talked earlier on about your journey. And you president of EMEA for Microsoft, and then you change to come over to small, medium enterprise channels. What makes that change? And is that a decision that you're like, this is very interesting and I gotta go into that org to make an impact? Or is that like the story you shared with me earlier on?
Oh, no. So this one was generally kind of getting asked to have the opportunity, and that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
I laughed EMEA, and there, obviously, I would have hoped people would say he could do further or can have further impact in EMEA. So I was finished, so to say, with the job, whatever it is. But then when people came with this one, I said, "Oh, that's fun. It's actually fascinating. It's extremely complicated. It is a space where I have experience, but I don't know what is right or wrong." I'm excited about the customer side. I'm excited about the partner stuff. It's a global thing. So I'm kind of ticking number of countries I have done deals. So I think I'm on country 45 or something.
That's incredible.
54, sorry. So I'm just literally also learning the global context. I didn't know how the detail of doing business in Americas works. Okay, so I feel I have seen now something expert know, but I've seen something and I can better judge what's going on. So I wanted to be a global leader. So there's a lot of things which just came, and then being complicated is energizing to be. And somehow having the fun of making complicated stuff simpler, I think is joy I have. So, yeah.
One of the things you said in one of the podcasts that I watched was you talked about China being one of the most memorable experiences for you.
Yeah.
Like, tell me a little bit about that.
So China was also in the category of my first two job changes I explained before. So China, I got a call from a friend, I would say, which at that point was my boss, and said, "Hey, Ralph," I was running in Germany at that time. I was only running it for 2.5 years or something. And he called me October timeframe. Family just settled, house, so the whole classic feel good environment. And he called me and said, "Hey, I thought about something, and I thought about you should do this." I said, "I actually think you called the wrong number. For no reason I can see that I'm able to do it right now." And so I said,
So even with that curiosity gene, even with that complexity,
no, so he called. You said,
still like,
yeah, he's like, he called. I said, and I remember, because in the Connect, I mentioned to him, look, if there's something international at some point, I would love to do it. And I said, you pushed it slightly too far. And what do you think international means in this context? And then he said, no. So he called me next day again and said, now, after you have been sleeping a night over it, where are you? I said, you crazy? I didn't even tell my wife at that stage. So long story short, we ended actually, interesting enough, at a headline from a family perspective: would we regret not to go there? And that was the big yes with 10 exclamation marks. And knowing that this was very complicated, timing was complicated, context was complicated, we moved there. And it was, for the family, most probably one of the best experiences we had in many ways. Business-wise, wonderful learning environment. And I had seen a great first year. I had seen super complicated second year. And then I had seen a reasonable recovery third year. And then I asked if I can stay one more year longer, because I felt I'm not done. So I said, hey, if there's a chance, I stay. Family looked at me like, really? So I said, yeah, come on, guys. So we stayed, and then, great learning, great memories. And this is also a place where I think curiosity got kind of trained more, because you have language and culture, which is not playing directly into your cards. But it was one of the best experiences for life, for sure.
that's amazing. That adventure, learning new things, challenging yourself a little bit. For folks that are watching this, that have a different level of adventure and curiosity, might not necessarily be moving a region or moving a market, right? But whether it's technology or whether it's even just moving an industry,
Yeah.
in the way you're selling into and supporting, like, what advice do you have for folks that want to take that risk, want to take that adventure, but they're kind of holding themselves back, like you did a little bit in the start of the journey?
So maybe a couple of thoughts where I just always encourage people to think through. So first of all, define what is important for you in the definition of career. What does career mean to you? Career has many meanings to different people. Some is a salary statement, some is a job type statement, some is a responsibility statement, some is a work-life balance statement. So first things first, define just what you want to do with your career. I'm deeply convinced 90% of people spend more time planning vacation than careers themselves. If you have a point of view, and one of my point of views was, I want to take care of my family in a responsible way, but I want to have a global experience, and I want to give them a global experience. That was one of my framing of careers, why I was in international companies. Then I think a next big one is really make sure that your manager understands what you want to do, or you have a system around you who understands what you want to do. And to me, that was an important learning as well, right? So you need to have a good qualitative discussion with your bosses. And people are afraid sometimes, because they think the moment I start How Do I X, they start questioning if I'm committed, or if they feel they can't help me, then they feel I'm not helpful for the team. So no. Make sure that your manager, make sure that the manager of the manager, make sure that HR actually understands where's your energy, where do you want to play, what is timelines, what is real, and make it real for yourself. So don't put yourself in a place where you afterwards come and say, man, I I can't do it. So be just genuinely in a place where you want to do it. And then the third one, in my view, and look, I have been lucky, I admit, but I'm convinced a good level of risk taking gets rewarded. Maybe not in the first step, but normally by doing these changes, you open new doors, you find new friends, you get new skills, which on the long run of the journey gives you maybe more stamina to be a bit more relaxed and look at things, or gives you more capabilities to be open and more flexible for other jobs. So these three things, I would say: career planning, share with the important people for your career what you want to do, and be okay to take some risks. Look, my stuff may look on paper very clean and very straightforward. I had moments where I didn't know what the next job is. That's okay.
So it's really that purpose, that clarity with conviction to your manager, to your leader. Also the ability or flexibility, rather, to take a little bit of risk here and there. Might not be risk on timing, might not seem the way you wanted to seem up front, but eventually with the risk comes learning, with the risk comes experience.
It's a bit sometimes location, sometimes timing, sometimes job skills. But look, it's a long working time we have. Okay. So you better have a good way to collect experiences and collect moments of growth. It's not linear. And so the more you help being okay that things are not linear, I think the easier it is when things get slightly more complicated or unexpected, that you can handle it.
It's one of the reasons I love doing these conversations, is to talk to people with experience. Because I think with experience, you have the ability to share, like you just described, and I love the way you described it, is your resume might not be as a perfect pie as it seems. There has been risks, there has been challenges, there has been moments where you've had to reflect on whether, is this the right one? Am I doing the right thing? And then it worked out in a way that was successful for you to define. And so I think that moment and that message is key for folks that are navigating through their careers. Another thing that's very important is around we talked about technology earlier on and the adoption with customers and companies specifically, but with individuals and organizations that are supporting the technology, that have to deliver the clarity on the outcomes that the technology provides. What is your piece of advice to those individuals to challenge things like status quo, where you remember with cloud as an example, right? Some customers would be like, we are going to stay on-prem. We don't want to hear any other benefit. Now we are not going to go to a large language model because we don't know what the ROI is, because our CEO thinks it's exciting, but there's no ROI yet. We're going to wait. And then the individual contributor that is communicating with the customer has to challenge that a little bit, right? Has to be creative. What pieces of advice do you have?
Nobody likes change, and resistance is a thing. Okay. And one of the most fascinating, when you see that resistance actually for change, is when people come and say, hey, we have this rule of compliance, or we have this rule of something, where you can see that there's basically something used to make sure that no change needs to come. First, I believe we should always start with ourselves and say, okay, do we actually feel, do we deeply believe in what we offer our customers and tell our customers to be great? Do we believe it? So when you have this Friday evening party with friends in a kitchen, can you, without a script, and can you with the greatest joy and the drink in your hands, make them dream with you why they should Monday morning go and say, I need this AI thing, because without that one, the world will stop. So number one, really have the fire in yourself to be excited about what others want to follow you. And then I think on the other side, then there's also very often, I think the attitude is you need to invite somebody to join you versus to push somebody to go somewhere. And that one, I feel, is a bit the art where people really need time to see through.
So I want us to unpack that a little bit. Invite someone to join you versus push them to go somewhere. Am I interpreting that in a way where I'm saying, you tell me what you need versus me inspiring you with something that's going to help you? Is that the right way to interpret what that means?
Understand. I would love to understand what is your motivation to say no. I would love to understand where could I help with my conviction, what I have to offer. I want you to see why I'm so convinced that if you join me using the technology, your life is so much better than just saying no. And so I think this combination of really having a deeply convicted point of view, why this is great, even including reflections where, you know what, this piece, we may not have it perfect, but believe in me, believe in us. Your signal makes us right. But then the other is getting somebody on board and say, look, this is the reason why I think you're on a great journey with doing this, versus if you don't do it, you miss out. So it's just, for me, a very different approach. And if you take it that way, it's a bit harder to really invest time and get the point of the other person understood. But I think it's more sustainable. And it's then, if you have built that trust in that context, it gives you more runway and gives you also more space to learn what is really going on. The person will be more transparent why he thinks he's saying no to something. The person will give you opportunities to be better and help solve his problem so that he can say yes to something.
I love the way you frame that, because obviously I've been in sales for a little bit of time. I've not heard it being in that level of distinction around asking someone to join you versus inspiring the outcome. I can only imagine at a customer side, a CEO, CIO, CFO, that doesn't get asked why not, how disappointed they could be, and then going to somebody else that might be asking them why not. And I think that difference just creates that clarity, creates that difference for how I think we need to be thinking, is what I'm translating into challenging status quo and bringing out creativity. I can talk to you for a long time about business and about leadership. I just feel like I've learned so much from your personal journey around principles, around character, around risk-taking, around decision-making, around being able to be creative, but also listen to learn, be curious, and then also your authentic approach. I loved your highlights around the different markets from an AI adoption perspective, that cultural adaptability with people around leadership and career, but then also at a business and at a scale level. So very, very insightful conversation. I always like to end my podcasts with a couple of rapid fire questions that I ask everybody. And so I think I might know some of the answers to these areas based on our conversation. So is your style more groundbreaking truths or people pleasing?
I think I like groundbreaking more.
I guess that one. How do you play the individual sport versus the team sport?
I was great in volleyball. Don't do team sport these days. I think the team stuff is more fun. So it's less a sport thing than a musician thing. So I enjoyed it a lot. And I do playing music. And I think the art of music is getting it as a team right, as a band right.
That is correct. Which is more important, to be the best or to be the only?
None of that resonates to me. Make somebody else being the best. That's a very good answer. Very good answer.
There's 3 people on a ladder, one at the top, one at the middle, one at the bottom. Who is the most important?
The bottom is doing the job, getting great.
Ralph, thank you so much.
Thank you, man. It's very nice to have you.
Such a great conversation.
Super to have you and super to do this. Well, very helpful. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you.